Hey guys, welcome back to the shack. Tonight we're going to be sitting behind the computer, diving into a question that I've been getting quite frequently from the WeCreat laser community, folks that have the machine or looking at getting the machine, and that comes down to the camera, how to use the camera, how accurate is the camera, how does it stack up against standard Lightburn cameras and whatnot. And so we're going to go through that. I'm going to test the camera, which I haven't really had time to do. We're going to calibrate it if needed, and I'm going to go over some things and show you some other little tricks and tips. So if that's something you're into, stick around. We'll be right back. All right, so the majority of the video, guys, is going to be screen grab. And so I'm just going to put you down here on the bottom screen. You'll be able to see everything that I'm doing. I'll try to remember to walk you through the processes, especially if it comes to calibration or whatnot. So let's jump down there and let's get this thing started. So here I am in the WeCreat software. I'm going to go straighten that material up. Not that it matters for what I'm doing, but it's just messing with my OCD. All right, hopefully that will look a little better in the camera feed here. There we go. Yes. All right. So one of the things that I want to do is I have not calibrated this camera yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just put me a little line, score, whichever you're used to calling it. And I'm going to go ahead and set that thing to 100% power at 130 millimeters a second. I don't want to go too slow because I don't want it to cut it, but I want a nice dark line to start with, and then we may adjust that from there. So go ahead and start the job. Well, I haven't set the focus yet. I did earlier, but here we go. Let's go ahead and set the focus. I did set it earlier when I first put that material in there, but it wants me to reset it. So we're going to do that right quick. Why this is critical, guys, and we'll go ahead and point this out while it's doing it. If you look at the standard Lightburn cameras, most of the time, the camera is fixed to the top of the enclosure or the mount or whatever apparatus holds it in place. Where the WeCreat kind of has a little bit of a better design for cameras. It's kind of the same as with a lot of your commercial CO2 machines. The bed brings the material up to focus. The focus cannot be set on the gantry of a, let's say a big thunder laser. You're not going to be bringing that gantry down to the material. You're going to be bringing the material up to that sensor that sets the Z-axis. So part of what makes cameras accurate is when you capture this image right here, it needs to be consistent. Like it needs to be consistently the same distance from the camera for the camera to be consistent. We're going to see how accurate this one is. I'm going to set that right there and go ahead and run it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this little job out so that it marks the material. And then we're going to refresh the image and see if it's where it says it was going to be. And as I said, I have not done any calibration or anything to this machine. It is in its factory condition. So just if it is terribly off, we're going to run the calibration process and I'll kind of walk you through that. Hopefully it won't be, but we'll see. All right, processing is complete. All right, so you can see where the line is. We're not going to move that. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to hit the refresh button to refresh the image. Now, as you can see, image is way off. All right, looks like we're doing a calibration, guys. That is not acceptable in any stretch of the imagination. So we're going to be going over into the settings, and I haven't done this, so we're going to click on this. And I think this says this is intended for situations where there's significant camera deviation. If the current visual positioning is relatively accurate within 2 millimeter deviation. Okay, first of all, 2 millimeters deviation is not acceptable for me. Not even with my Lightburn cameras that I typically use. I can typically get them down to 1 millimeter accuracy or less, as long as you have it set up properly and all that. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward with the calibration. They did include with the machine some sheets that are intended for this purpose. And so we're going to 1/8 inch or 3mm. Yep. All right, so I'm going to grab a piece of the material they sent, and we'll go forward from there. All right, this is the material they sent, and it says on there, do not use except for camera calibration. So I'm going to go ahead. I got my caliber. I'm going to measure it, and it is 2.85 millimeters. So 2.85 millimeters. And then we're going to go to next step. All right, so the next step, basically what it's saying here is we need to place the board with the corner kind of indexed over here, and then hit start calibration. So let me move over to the machine. And like I said, material is in there exactly the way they said to do it. So we're going to go ahead and hit start. Yes, we do. So the machine is off and doing stuff on its own. I'll kind of bring you along. All right, guys. So basically this machine is now adding the reference points in the work area. These are known points that it knows exactly where they are. It's going to take the image that it captures from the camera and use some really sophisticated math equations to calculate the lens correction needed to make the camera accurate. And we'll see how it works. So it's sitting there saying it's drawing the pattern. I guess it's waiting on confirmation that that has completed. So we'll wait a minute. All right, calibration data at the bottom, step 2. Not sure what I'm supposed to do here. I guess I'm just supposed to sit here. Okay, it's doing something. Let's peek and see what it is. So what the machine's doing, guys, is it's taking the top reference points, the middle reference points, and the bottom reference points, and it's mapping everything out using, like I said, a very complex math equation that I would not be able to do. And it's going to use the data that it gains from that to determine exactly where those points are. I'm not sure if they're taking into consideration the z-axis height, but to me it appears they are. You'll see later in the calibration that the camera's pretty accurate all through the z-axis settings. So the only thing I can come up with is they're measuring both, you know, focused and all the way up to the top of the enclosure. So that's gonna benefit it and make it a little more accurate, in my opinion, moving forward. So after a few minutes, it completed, and this is me burning a little square for a reference, and we're going to go into the software and see exactly how accurate it was. So somebody forgot to change the video feed, though. So you missed me putting the square in there, but let's get back to it. All right, so this time I'm going to refresh the view before I move it, just to see. Maybe the machine is using its elevated position as a reference. So that's doable. I mean, like I said, cameras aren't going to be 100% accurate. We could stand to come down just a little and to the right just a little. But I'm zoomed in as far as it'll let me zoom. So let's autofocus and see if it changes. So maybe their calibration is done on their end in their software. Maybe their calibration is done from fully extended. And if it is, then we should notice a deviation once I focus it and refresh the picture here. So I'm trying to figure the software out. Like I said, WeCreat software wasn't something I ran a lot of. So, but we'll take a look here. It's refreshing the image now. So if yeah, it actually done pretty well, even there. Still got that deviation to it, just ever so slightly. As far as I know, I don't have a way of offsetting that. No, I've got a camera calibration. So at this point, I think that's probably as close as we're going to get it, which I'm going to be honest with you, that's pretty accurate. The only gripe that I have with the setup is the way the machine is built. It is rather difficult with the module in place to frame with any accuracy, especially on small stuff. So you're really heavily dependent on the camera, but like I said, not a bad result. You can see that there is some deviation there, but not terrible. So with that said, let's jump over to Lightburn, and I haven't recalibrated my Lightburn camera, but we'll test it out right quick and see how it stacks up. All right, so I had to restart my screen capturing software and everything because this camera is the one that I was using for that, and it doesn't work with Lightburn and the streaming software at the same time. So we're going to leave this piece of material where it was and kind of go in here and play with what we got going on with this design already. So I'm going to go over here to my little drawing tool, and I'm going to draw myself a line. And I'll do the best I can to put that thing right on top of the line that was already made by the other software. And so there we go. So got that drawn in there directly on top of the other line. The one thing that we do have to do with this machine is because I'm in Lightburn, things work a little different. So I'm going to go over here and hit the focus button here. All right. This camera was set with the machine focused, so hopefully the image will remain accurate. All right, so it's moved out of the way. I'm going to update the overlay, and as you can see, yes, it is different from being up at the top where it was to being focused. Did move my line. So I'm just going to make sure I got this guy as close as I can get it to the center of this other line. And we'll send it out there and see what happens. Now, you will notice that with Lightburn, the machine did not go back all the way to the top the way it does with WeCreat. So here we go. Let's update and see what we did. So there is a little bit of a shift there, but with Lightburn, I can take this guy here if there is a variation, and we can move it. And I know last time I used this camera, I did set an offset and it didn't save. So that may be on Lightburn. Let's see, 1.25. Okay, so let's move it out. Take my little square and let's move it over here somewhere else in the work area and run it again. Might save a file to get these camera settings, or hit the save settings button over here. So there we go. And you can continue to tweak this to get it dialed in exactly where you want it. I've got 2 on the Y and 1.2 over here. We'll hit that save settings button to try to get that to save. And so now we should be well calibrated. And let's run another one. And so there we go. So yeah, either camera is going to serve the purpose, in my opinion, of what you should expect from a camera. Their calibration software worked pretty well. It's getting good results, but you know, in Lightburn, you don't have access to that camera. So I've added a camera to mine and set it up to where I can, you know, use it when I'm using Lightburn, because with, like I said, with theirs, you can't. So we'll go ahead and target that. But I will tell you, the machine actually does operate faster in Lightburn than it does in the WeCreat software. And there is where you start getting away from the center of the workspace, especially with this fisheye camera. You're going to start seeing a little more deviation than you do in the center. But let's move back over into WeCreat software and do some playing there. All right, guys, back over here in the Create software, and we're going to go ahead and run a couple more little tests with this camera. And I just want to show you that, like I said, regardless of the software, you have hardware limitations when you only have one camera. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. So I'm going to line this up with this little mark right here. We're going to hit the autofocus button just to make sure nothing changes, and then we'll go forward. I'm going to burn this one first just to show you how accurate it is in the center of the workspace, and then we're going to run out to the far reaches and just give you a little demonstration of the deviation. And you'll see a consistent pattern with the deviation, and just to give you an idea of the physics behind this as far as the way it comes with collecting the light and everything. So there you go. All right, so we're dead on right there. I'm gonna go ahead and send this burn out and see where it hits. All right, so job is complete, and we're gonna hit the refresh button and see how we did. That's very acceptable. So, like I said, you can see it's a little scorched in other areas, but that is highly, highly acceptable for what we're doing. So we're gonna go up here in this top corner of the work area, and I'm gonna send that out there. Yeah, it's gonna make me autofocus. WeCreat, would you fix that, please? It would be nice if you could turn the requirement to autofocus every time off and just have that be a a user thing. If you prefer to have it that way, you could leave it on. If you prefer for the z-axis to stay set until you change it, then have it do that way too, because it does increase time when you're trying to do multiples. And as you can see, our little square did move when it's set to focus. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it back centered and send that out. All right, waiting on the machine. All right, so let's see how it did. Now keep in mind the machine did go back to the top after the burn, so we're gonna have to refocus it just to be sure. But you can see that it looks as though the cut came in from where the line was. So just to make sure that the focus is not what's causing the problem, I'm going to hit the autofocus to move the machine and see if it lines it up better or makes it worse. Okay, so I think it made it a little worse. So there you go. That's the shift that you're going to get near the far reaches. Now, if we come back to the center, just like with any other camera out there, guys, if you come back to the center of the work area and run this job again. All right, guys, so this is one of the issues that me personally, I prefer Lightburn, is all these steps to go through to get the job to go out, and it takes substantially longer. So I'm going to try to trim this part of the video out just to keep this video from being so long. But you can see with their software, it does take a while to get the burn to complete. Okay, the one thing that I will add is if you're new to lasers and you feel more comfortable with this application, then by all means use it. But it does add a lot of unnecessary steps to the process, in my opinion, that you don't have to make in Lightburn. Like I said, there in the center of the workspace, much, much better. I'm gonna hit the autofocus button again just to see if it changes when it focuses. So we'll zoom down to where we can see if it shifts any. So not a whole lot of change, but there again, that's what I would expect from a camera. It's nothing too extraordinary, but nothing too terrible either. So, but you get the idea, and you saw how when we did the line over here, the image kind of skewed inward toward the center of the workspace. Well, let's see what happens when we do it over here. And I'm going to try to line this up with this guy as well. And I'm thinking I focused it. Yes. They say I know I just focused it. So let's see what it does. And my guess is that the burn is going to be toward the center of the work area, probably to the left and down just a fuzz. Probably more so to the left than it is down, because again, the shape of the lens of the camera, in order for it to be able to encompass the entire work area. But that's, like I said, that's just the way light bends, and I expect it to do that. So let's refresh and see what happens. Look at there, in and down. And as you notice, guys, it's headed towards the center of the work area, because that's where the actual point of calibration is perfectly centered here. And it doesn't matter what software it is, a single camera system. This is about it's about as good as you're going to expect. On good days, you'll have better results, and if you play around with the settings, you can get a lot more precision. And I've got to get used to this software, moving this thing around. Why am I? Okay. My navigation in here is terrible. All right, guys, back in Lightburn, and we're going to run another couple little zaps just to make sure everything is still good. I'm going to go over here to console, and I'm going to bump the focus button. And I will say, like I said, the workflow with Lightburn, I'm really impressed with the compatibility that WeCreate's built into this machine with Lightburn, as opposed to the previous machine. This one actually works really well with Lightburn. So once I focus the machine, now we're going to go back over to the camera, and I'm going to update the overlay. And because I did set this camera with the machine focused, that's kind of a trick that you got to remember, is if you calibrate the machine with the camera focused, then anytime you focus the machine, the material is going to be the same distance from the camera when it is focused. So that gives it a lot more accuracy. So we're going to run that out there and I'm going to try to aim and hit that little square, and then we'll update it. So got that set to 80 speed, 100 millimeters a second. Let's change that. Let's do like 130 at 100%, and we'll run it out there. So there we go. And let's update the overlay. So there you go. A little bit of shift on it this time, and it looks like, to be honest with you, the shift that I put in there is not entirely accurate at that location. So we'll do another one over here, and this is where Lightburn does have an advantage. See how fast that is to do that burn. So I prefer Lightburn. So now that I got my offset set, and that's one thing that I think that WeCreate software could allow you to do, would be to put an offset in here. It'd be kind of nice. I'm going to move this over in the far reaches, not where the module sits, and run it again. All right, so let's update the overlay. You can see the shift is still happening, same scenario, but in my opinion, not as bad. And the machine's a lot faster in Lightburn. And I think, like I said, they nailed it. There you go. There's your shift. So all these cameras are going to behave the same way, is the moral of the story, guys. Now, I really like the way this thing runs in Lightburn. See how much quicker that is between, you don't have to focus. Actually pretty precise on that one. You don't have to wait on it to focus, because you just send it. And here we go, run that one. And that one was dead on. So there you go. Cameras, whether it's in Lightburn or whether it's in WeCreate, XCS, whatever it's in, they're a very valuable tool in my opinion, but not 100%. So now, this piece of material said not to use for anything but the calibration, but since we've already marked it all up, I'm going to run a couple of little files here just to see what we can come up with. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to go over here in Lightburn. I'm going to offset that guy to about 5 millimeters. Throw me a line on the outside of it, and I'm going to take that line. I'm going to here change it to a cut. So I'm going to go over here to my cuts and layers. It's a 40-watt machine, so we're going to run 250 on the speed. 127 we fine on that. Cutting, this is 3 millimeter material, so surely 40 watts, 20 millimeters a second should do fine. And we're going to run that and see what it does. I'll put you back over here where you can see this little small camera at least. Okay, so my guess was a little off. I didn't quite cut it out. 20 is a little quick. It gave it a good try, but not quite. So we're going to slow that down a little bit. Okay, one thing that I will give WeCreat is if you use the bed to index your material, you guys saw I just pulled that piece of material out, inspected it, and it didn't cut all the way through, so I put it back in there. So I'm going to update the overlay, and you can see nothing has really moved. So if this happened to you, we're gonna salvage this little work piece here. I'm just going to show you how having cameras and indexing your material in the machine so that you can put it exactly back where it was, how that's a really handy thing to do. So I'm going to take and I'm going to change this cut here to 15. That should be more than adequate. Why is that on constant power? That's not a good thing. Maybe that's why I didn't cut it out. So we're going to take that off of constant power. Let me check this other one. No, don't know how that happened, but I'm going to send this cut back out and we're going to see if we can't cut it out. Now, the cool thing about Lightburn is I'm not going to reset the focus because I'm using the same material. So I'm just going to start the job and put it on the camera so you can watch this. So the benefits of indexing your material, even if you're just trying to cut something out, that's what it is if things don't go the way you wanted to and you want to save a little material, you can always send it back out. And as long as the material is indexed, whether the camera is accurate or not, you can rerun that same cut. And almost always, as long as the machine is accurate, you will hit the same exact line. And you can see there, looks pretty good from there. So let's go over to the machine, see what it looks like. All right, so we salvaged it. It did hit the exact same cut. There wasn't any onion peel or any little thin layers or anything. So that's a good thing. That is one benefit that the fixed machines that have the enclosure, by them having places that you can reference and index your material, it allows you to salvage pieces like this. Because if you hadn't been able to line that piece up perfectly, if it hadn't been indexed, yeah, you could try to use the camera, but chances are you're not going to get it exactly right. But because the material was indexed in the machine, it was exactly the same place it was the first time I ran it. So we're going to hit the back down to the screen just to give you another peek. I'm going to update the overlay again. And there you can see that it's still lined up really, really well. So that's the benefit when you start trying to run multiple shapes. If I wanted to run this again, and let's say I wanted to really be stingy, and I know this is not realistic, guys, because this shape is not really going to matter. But if you were trying to be stingy and save material, and you wanted to nest these things to try to get it close to where the other material was, you could nest that there and run the cut. And I'll throw the little tiny screen up so you can see it. And like I said, this shape doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do this with, but it was already in a workspace, so we're just going to rock it. Imagine that this was triangles, or you had a triangle and you're putting it in a triangular space. You're just using the camera to kind of maximize material. So there you go. You've almost got it perfectly aligned with that one. And so same thing over here. If you were really stingy with your material, this is where having a camera comes in handy, especially if it's accurate. And this one's plenty accurate. So I'm going to send that out also. Oh, wait a minute. I made it too big. Stand by. Let me shrink this down. So we'll just shrink this down and nest it right there. That's a pretty good little nesting. So we're only leaving, what's that, maybe like 1.5 millimeters of material. So I'm going to run it back out. All right, updating the overlay. And look at that. All right, so let me go grab that material and I'll show you what we did. All right, so as you can see, guys, not a lot of material wasted there. That's one of the benefits. If you're one of those guys that likes to keep your material, and let's say you've got a shape that you can fit in one of these little voids and you just want to run it and just cut it out of that one little spot. Well, cameras is one of those things that makes that very, very useful and allows you to do that. And I use them constantly because, like, this little piece of material, I won't throw it away because I can literally target and reuse parts of this. You know, it's a big benefit. And I will say this, the accuracy of cameras typically, and you can see that that camera is on the lid, so that's the only thing that messes with me sometimes. I forget about that. But the accuracy of the camera is dependent on the thickness of the material in most diode lasers, with the exception of, like with my EnclosureZilla, the bed of my machine raises up and down, which adds increased camera accuracy because whether I'm doing 3 millimeter material or whether I'm doing 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch material, when I raise that material up, I raise it up to the machine and I try to keep that material at the same level as where it was when I calibrated the camera. Now you're gonna get some variations, and that's gonna happen. The benefit with the WeCreat is it actually brings the camera down to the same distance from the surface of the material when it sets the focus. Because if the focus is set properly every single time, you're going to have the same distance from the camera lens to the material surface. And that, in my opinion, is what makes this camera setup a little more accurate than most if you don't have that in your machine. If you're using a machine that has a fixed bed and a fixed camera and you put different materials in there, then yes, you're going to have to calibrate 1/4 inch material, 3 millimeter material, 1/2 inch material. You know, if you're engraving something that's 1.5 inches tall, 1.5 inches thick, and you're just engraving the top of it, that's going to change the camera calibration. So there's a lot of things to consider. And if you're new to lasers and you're in the WeCreat machine as being something that you think is useful, that is a benefit to the machine. And I can't take that away from them. That's a really good thing. I keep waiting on some of the other machines to get into the movable beds. That would be a total game changer as far as cameras goes. Being able to frame the material, because if you bring the bed up, if you have an appropriate window in the right place, you could still have a fully enclosed machine with just a window, and you could actually frame the machine easier. That's the one negative, I guess. If I had a really big negative about this machine's the way it's constructed, is I wish they'd have gave me a window so I could actually look in there and see the framing a little better, because it's kind of hard standing over the top of the machine looking down in there. But as long as your camera is mostly accurate and you use jigs and you index your material, you can work around that. So I just wanted to put this video out. I've had a lot of questions about my camera as compared to the WeCreat's factory camera, and I'm not knocking the WeCreat's factory camera. It works fine. But to me, the machine as a whole, it works better in Lightburn. And I'm sorry, WeCreat, but it just works better in Lightburn to me. Maybe that's because I'm used to Lightburn. And, you know, if you're a new person that has never run a laser and you like the simplicity of the WeCreat software, the cool thing about it is, as opposed to the previous machine, is you can get this machine, run it with the WeCreat software, you know, get your feet under you, understand how the machine works, the kind of projects that you can make. If you need to do something complex, or once you graduate to that level that you're ready to do other things, now with the addition of the Lightburn compatibility, you can download Lightburn and just move over into it and start getting really, really creative and use the tools that Lightburn brings to the table. But if you want to go into WeCreat's little online store and purchase files and do it from there, you can do that too. The one thing I will tell you is, when switching from Lightburn to the WeCreat software and vice versa, you have to exit the software, turn the machine off, and turn the machine back on. And you'll have to do that no matter which way you're going. If I were to go back into the WeCreate software now, I'll have to reboot the machine. And that's because once it establishes communications with the software, it kind of sticks in that mode. So when you reset it, it then will just reach out to see what mode it needs to be in. So that was one of the big questions I keep getting asked about the WeCreate. How happy am I with it as far as Lightburn? How well the camera works, whether I like my Lightburn camera better than the factory camera. And guys, cameras are cameras. Now, there are some machines whose cameras do a little better than others. But with the way that the material bed comes up and down on this machine, or the top comes down on this machine, it gives it a little bit of an edge on fixed camera setups as far as that goes. I've got a couple more machines in the building that the camera actually moves to the material before it takes the picture. That makes them a lot more accurate. So if you're used to a fixed camera on a regular diode laser that you just set stuff on a honeycomb, you're going to get better results with the camera on this machine than you will on that one. So I just wanted to cover that and go through it. It's been a long week trying to get back into making some content, and there's a lot of folks that are kind of eyeballing the new WeCreate 40 watt, but have been asking me about the Lightburn compatibility, where I stood on it. I have been playing with the machine, using it on a few jobs here and there. I've only released a couple of videos, but that's just because I've been busy in the shop. Hopefully we can get back to doing a few more. If you have any questions or if you have any ideas for content, feel free to drop that down in the comments below, because the way that I typically do it is I'm going to wait until the job comes in that I need this machine for, and I'll use that job for content. But stuff like this, I felt like you guys would like to know where I stand, and so far I haven't had any problems with the machine. The WeCreate software it works. It's not as, to me, it's not as good for production. So, start out with the WeCreate software, and maybe one day you can move into Lightburn and you get all these cool features. But now keep in mind, you will have to add a camera for Lightburn, temporarily at least. I did reach out to WeCreate, send them the video where I've added the camera to it, and there's probably some discussion amongst them about the need for adding a camera for Lightburn, or at least offering it as an optional upgrade. Maybe that'll come, and if it does, maybe they'll name it after me or something. Who knows? But until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.